This Sunday, the church begins a detour from the Gospel of Mark as the gospel we hear at Sunday Masses to spend some time with the Gospel of John and what we refer to as the Bread of Life discourse. It's from chapter 6 of John's Gospel, and it begins with John's account of the multiplication of the loaves and the fishes. Now, there's so many things that we can talk about in this particular story, but it all leads into, a deeper understanding of the Eucharist. And, we actually begin in the Old Testament with a reminder that Elisha once multiplied many loaves, 20 loaves actually, to feed about 100 men. And while that itself is miraculous, it's nothing in comparison to what Jesus is going to do. He multiplies 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed 5,000 men, not counting the women and children who were present. And there's so many details along the way, like I said, little references that John makes to this detail or that if we stop and use our imagination, we understand more of the picture that's being painted for us. For one thing, the people reclined on green grass, right? There's a lot of green grass there. And, Jesus, is there before all of these people and has them recline in green pastures, right? Reminiscent of Psalm 23 and the way that the Lord would shepherd his people and care for them, tend them. So what does he do? He desires to feed them. They're in need of food, and the disciples, they're so good. And Andrew, in this moment, he's just trying to figure out, how can we provide here? 300 denarii, 300 days' wages wouldn't be enough to buy enough food for all of those people. And yet he recognizes that there's this boy there who has 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he almost, you can imagine him exclaiming it and then realizing, what is this? It's like, Jesus, there's this boy here who's got 5 loaves and 2 fish, but what good is that going to do? So Jesus, gives thanks over the bread and the fish, and it's multiplied, and they feed the entire crowd, right? But that's so much. The points that we're looking at. We make this connection here, with the Eucharist. In so many ways, this is at the heart of the Eucharist for John's Gospel. Yeah, when we get to the Last Supper, we hear a lot of what Jesus says about service and love and laying down your life. But when it comes to his description of the Eucharist, it comes from this particular chapter, chapter 6. So when Jesus gives thanks, right, that's really the word Eucharist. He Eucharistizes, the bread, if you will, and divides it and shares it with the people, right? And afterwards, after he's given thanks, it's been consecrated, if you will, and it feeds all of those people who have reclined in the green pastures. What happens? Well, they have so much left over. God has created an abundance through this miracle. And they gather the fragments, the little pieces. Actually, there's a reference to pieces of the Eucharist in that word for fragments. But it's gathered together, into 12 baskets, right? Referencing the 12 tribes of Israel. The new Israel is being gathered together through this celebration of Eucharist into one body. So the people are amazed with what Jesus has done, but it's also, again, in so many ways, opening an understanding to who Jesus is, opening that understanding up to recognize that he is, in fact, the Good Shepherd, and he's providing for his sheep. But as well, he's pointing in the direction of the mission that he has come for, to lead the people out of slavery to sin, and ultimately with this new manna from heaven that he's going to feed them as they journey on their way to the promised land. And so the people exclaim at the end of this miracle, this surely is the prophet, right? The one who had come to stand in the place of Moses and to lead the people on their journey to the promised land. So there's so much more to come in the weeks ahead as Jesus opens up the reality of what the Eucharist is and what he has provided in himself, in his very self, to feed us and strengthen us for the journey. And all of it points our hearts to great hope as we continue to journey to the promised land.